What's up, my friends, and welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. As always, we broadcast live, but this time from the Xfinity mobile studio. We're brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. TrueMark Financial Credit Union. Head on over to any one of their 24 branch locations or head online to truemark.com/PHLY 24/7 to get started. It's been a while since we've had the opportunity to talk to you for a multitude of reasons. And so I'm going to start today's show by apologizing for a couple of different things. First of all, last Friday, the day after Christmas, we were not here because, as many across the Delaware Valley and many here at PHLY have found out, the stomach bug is no joke. The thing that's going around right now is not any fun. I would not wish it on my worst enemy. My wife and I both got hit with it right on Christmas, and it was a miserable end to our holidays. So if you haven't gotten it yet, please, I just implore you, wash your hands, stay away from sick people, all that kind of good stuff. It is cold and flu season, but my goodness, if you can avoid getting that bug, do it, because it was a miserable experience. And then on Monday, we had to pivot because other people here at PHLY have gotten sick, and it's just been a ridiculous avalanche effect of sickness here at PHLY. So we're back. It's been over a week since we have been on the air. The last time we talked to you was the Monday before Christmas. So first and foremost, I want to say a happy holidays to each and every one of you. I hope you had a wonderful holiday season, spent time with family and friends, got to do all the holly jolly merry and all of that. And I hope that you had a wonderful holiday week, whether you celebrate Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, whatever it might be. I hope you had a wonderful holiday week. Second, I would like to apologize for my voice today, because as I finally got better from the bug, now I just have a regular everyday cold, and I sound like I'm underwater. So I'm going to apologize for that. So you're probably going to be hearing a little bit more of our friend Ethan Hartley today in just a little bit. So let's get started on today's show. But first, here's what's coming up on the PHLY Phillies podcast. We are just a few days away from the Tatsuya Imai decision, and I'm going to tell you why I still think I have a gut feeling the Phillies are in play. And I also want to talk about this whole lead up to the final day of his posting period, the same with Murakami's posting period, and the same with Akamoto's posting period, which is just a few days after Tatsuya Imai's. We're going to do a year in review show today as well. We'll talk back about the 2025 Philly seasons, the ups, the downs, the goods, the bad. We'll talk about it, and we'll give you a grade on the Phillies season at the end of the show. And then we're going to get into our MLB top 5 for 2025. We have 4 different categories: the top 5 pitchers, the top 5 hitters, the top 5 surprises of Major League Baseball in 2025, and the top 5 disappointments in 2025. So let's get started. Welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zulli, Ethan Hartley, you hanging out with us here in the chat. Let's start today's show with the Tatsuya Imai conversation, because I've said to you guys plenty of times, I have no inside information. I have no knowledge past what you see on social media, what you see on Twitter, what you're hearing in reports, what John Heyman talked about the other day, kind of used the Phillies name in passing more than anything else. But I've said to you now for weeks, I have this gut feeling that the Phillies are going to be in the Tatsuya Imai sweepstakes. And I don't know if sweepstakes is necessarily the right word to use, because as one of our commenters here puts out, why is this year Japanese players taken so long to sign? That's kind of the crux of this conversation. It's been a weird posting period for the big 3 of the Japanese stars, as in, again, Tatsuya Imai, Okamoto, and Murakami. Murakami didn't sign till about, 17 hours or so before his posting period ended, and only ended up getting a 2-year deal for $34 million from the White Sox. And we've talked about this on Monday with Jamie last week. While I'm not necessarily the biggest Murakami fan, the strikeout rates concerned me, the in-zone contact rates concerned me, the swing and miss stuff was definitely there. 2 for 34 feels like a really good deal for the Chicago White Sox. I think it ended up being a really good move for them. But now we're talking about Murakami signing a small deal right at the end of his posting period. Tatsuya Imai is just 2 days away from his posting period being over, and there's not been a whole lot of conversation about what's the big contract look like. There was a report early in the offseason that said he could get $185 million. I don't think he's going to get anywhere close to $185 million at this point. I also don't think it's going to be the 5, 6, 7-year deal that maybe we expected or thought was going to happen when the offseason began. I think you're probably looking at a 3 or 4-year deal for Tatsuya Imai as a 27-year-old. And then with Okamoto, whose posting period ends in just a couple of days, you've not heard a whole lot about him either. There's been some, whispers and connections, and there's teams that are in play. The Tigers I've heard, the Mets I've heard. When it comes to Imai, we've talked about a whole bunch of different teams, the Cubs, the Astros, the Braves, even though they've said they're not going to spend on big-time starting. It's been a weird offseason for the Japanese stars and their posting periods. And that's where we get to this conversation about Tatsuya Imai. The longer that it has progressed, the more I feel like more teams come into play. And when you talk about more teams coming into play, teams like the Phillies, even though they are a big market, high spending team, they're kind of capped out per se in terms of their spending. Now all of a sudden kind of become players in this conversation. Again, I think they've always been players in terms of doing due diligence, but it felt to me like they would make an offer. They made reportedly the largest offer on the table for Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He turned it down. He said he wanted to play with the Dodgers. That's his prerogative. You can't do anything about it. But the Phillies have reportedly offered that big contract. I would imagine Dave Dombrowski in the front office is very much interested in Tatsuya Imai as well at the right price. Really what I think is their thought process is probably at their price. And the longer that this thing has drug out, the less money I'm inclined to believe he's going to get. Therefore, I think puts the Phillies squarely back in play. And so that's been my justification for that gut feeling that I've had about them being players in the Tatsuya Imai sweepstakes. I'm going to say this right off the rip. I don't think the Phillies sign Tatsuya Imai. I do think he signs somewhere else. I think Chicago very much makes sense. I think the Yankees make sense, even though they've said they may not spend any more on starting. I think the Mets make sense. I think that there are a lot of teams that make a ton of sense for Tatsuya Imai that not necessarily are going to be the Phillies. But the longer this thing drags out, the more I've talked myself into the Phillies being players. And I have talked myself into Tatsuya Imai being a very, very good pitcher. Now, if we're comparing it to the last few starters that have come out of Japan, the high-end starters, if you take Yoshinobu Yamamoto at the very top of it, because I think he was the most highly touted. Now, I'm going to exclude Shohei Ohtani from this conversation because of his two-way ability. But if you take strictly the starting pitchers, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, to me, was the top of this conversation. I think he got the biggest deal that you're going to see amongst the starters. I believe it was 12 years. It was somewhere up in $200 million. It was a massive contract that effectively will be Yamamoto's MLB career for the most part, more or less. Tatsuya Imai is not going to get anywhere close to that. And I don't think Tatsuya Imai is the type of pitcher that Yoshinobu Yamamoto is. But if you take the next step down, I am probably willing to say he falls in the category of Roki Sasaki. Now, the difference is the age, of course. Sasaki, much younger, power fastball, was a closer in the postseason for the Dodgers, maybe a little bit more out of necessity, probably will shift back to the starting rotation in 2026. But despite the age difference, I think you can put him somewhere in that fold in terms of what my expectations are for a rookie season for Tatsuya Imai. I would put him ahead of Shota Imanaga. And you see right there, right on cue with our comment right there. Imai greater than Imanaga? I think so. I think Imanaga is a finesse type of pitcher, right? Doesn't throw particularly hard, has a really good downward vertical breaking ball. That splitter is nasty, but he's not the same guy, in my opinion, that Tatsuya Imai is. So if I were to put Imai in a bucket, it would be less than Yoshinobu Yamamoto, but it would be more than Shota Imanaga. And I think if that's the type of starter that you're going to get, I think you end up with a legitimate 2. And so when it comes to how his career unfolds, I think that is a really legitimate top of the line starting pitcher. And again, the longer that this thing kind of unfolds, the more teams get involved. Let's take a look at Imanaga's numbers from a season ago in the MPB with the Lions. 24 appearances, a 1.92 ERA, 163 innings pitched, well over a strikeout per inning, almost 180 strikeouts, and that 45 walk number I think is important because it was his career best in walks per nine. His control has gotten significantly better over the years. So in 2022, he posted a 3.8% walk rate. 2023, that number was down to 11.4. 2024, he went into the single digits for the first time at 9.8. Last year, he was at 7% for his walk rate. It was his best walk rate by a lot, and it's why you see in big part the whip was as good as it was, a .892 whip, because he only gave up 101 hits. You know he's not giving up a lot of damage with the bat. It was more so getting his command, getting his control, getting his walk rate in check, and he did that at a much better rate. Now, you see the Baseball Savant-esque page on the right there. The walk rate is still just in the 29th percentile, but it is better as his MPB career has gone on. Every other number is massively in the right direction. He generates a ton of swing and miss. His fastball velo for the MPB, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, was in the 100th percentile. His ERA plus, his FIP, his whip, his home run percentage, his strikeout, all of those numbers are in the incredibly right direction. And it's why, to me, this guy still has, borderline one, but probably slots in as a really nice number two in Major League Baseball. So what does he do well? Well, as you see, a lot of things. Generates a lot of swing and miss. He is not, I don't want to say he's not power fastball, because he can get the fastball up to 98, 99 miles an hour, but he'll sit, 93 to 95. I would say, I looked at a chart earlier this week, over 800 of his pitches have ranged somewhere between 93 and 96 miles an hour. So he'll sit right there, unlike Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who is a 6-7 pitch different, an arsenal type of pitcher. Imai does throw 6 different pitches, but he's heavy fastball slider overlay. 48% fastball last year, 33% slider, makes up 81% of his total pitches. He went 10% changeup, 4% splitter. He throws that Vulcan change at about 2%, the curveball at about 2%. He'll use the slider, especially against right-handed hitters, where he gets a ton of swing and miss. 53% swing and miss against righties on the slider. He uses that with the fastball almost 90 or over 90% of the time against righties. He'll mix in the changeup and the splitter a little bit more against lefties, but against righties, he's primarily fastball, slider, and he's really, really good with both of those pitches. I was reading a comp article a couple weeks ago. I've told you about this article. The comparison in terms of usage, like stuff usage, was Luis Castillo from the Seattle Mariners, who's had a heck of a major league career himself. And then in terms of fastball, they were comparing him to Joe Ryan. And I think if you can compare yourself to Joe Ryan, who was an all-star for the first time last year, that's a really good place to be. He'll be 28 at the end of the season last year, or at the end of the season next year. Still a big chunk of his major league career to go. And I think that this is the type of guy that if I'm selling out, if I'm going over the next luxury tax threshold and not worrying about that monetary restrictions, remember the Phillies are now paying basically $2 on every dollar for every dollar that they go over, because they are multiple repeat offenders in the tax bracket conversation. If they're going to blow through that luxury tax number and just say bleep it, we're spending money. They are the 4th highest spending luxury tax team in 2025. I expect them to be right there in 2026. If they're going to be that, I think if they're going to make that jump to Yankees, Mets, Dodgers type of, maybe not Dodgers, but Yankees, Mets in that realm, I think that the likelier scenario is that they would do it on starting pitching because of their love to have depth and quality starters, knowing that they're very likely going to lose Ranger Suarez. If the Phillies were to make a big splash signing, I think that Tatsuya Imai would make a ton of sense. Makes a ton of sense for everybody. Again, do I think that they end up signing him? I don't. I think he ends up as a member of the Chicago Cubs, if I had to make a guess. But I do think that the Phillies become in play the more this thing drags on. And we have 48 hours left to figure out how, or to see how this thing's going to unfold. But I do think they're very much in play. All right, let's welcome our second member of today's show, our producer, our co-host, who is a world traveler over the last couple of weeks. That's our friend Ethan Hartley. First of all, Ethan, I haven't had a chance to talk to you since we last departed on Monday. Happy holidays to you and your family. I hope you had a wonderful holiday week with your family.
You too as well. Yes, it is very nice. I am in the great state of California, doing my best to sabotage the future Dodger plans, whatever that incites, but to
I
save
just need you to
baseball.
figure out what's going on with their books. They're cooking the books somewhere.
Yeah, there's a lot of mattress firms out here, a lot of money laundering happening. Are my total conclusions so far.
So let me ask you this. We've talked about Imai a lot this offseason. I don't think there's a whole lot of secrets. You know how much I value this guy, and I think he would be an incredible difference maker to a starting rotation, any rotation. And I would be thrilled if the Phillies ended up going and spending the money on a guy like Tatsuya Imai. I know they need a bat. I know they need a right-handed hitter. I think really in my heart of hearts, they're probably not going to spend money anywhere, big money anywhere. But as this thing unfolds, we're 48 hours removed from a posting deadline decision. That's where my wonderment starts to come in. My fandom starts to come in. And I wonder, are all teams kind of in play at this point? And does that contract feel a little bit less than maybe we thought it was going to? So I guess in your estimation with 48 hours to play, what kind of percentage would you put the Phillies and Imai comparison together at this point?
It's definitely going up as time has gone on, as we've already seen with Murakami and the White Sox. I mean, they almost seemed like a team that never had any play involved whatsoever. And as time went on, and teams were giving as much offers, they were, probably his camp was more willing to open up the ideas of signing elsewhere. And he ends up in the White Sox, who have notoriously not spended and choose to live in the depths in the bottom depths of the standings as much as possible just to save money. So I think as time goes on, and money probably at this point is the biggest factor in which it is, that really opens up more opportunities for other teams to jump in and give their own offers, because it is more friendly towards their books to be able to have him come in and see what their transition is like, and see what he can contribute overall. If I had to give a number at this point, it's probably maybe 40%, I feel like.
Oh, you're actually even in a higher stakes than I am. I'm probably in like the 20-25 range.
Yeah, I mean, Ranger's probably gone at this point in terms of what we've seen other players already go for it and having a much proven track record. But if the Phillies want an opportunity to find some kind of replacement in terms of stuff and ability, I think Imai is a good place to start with in terms of what his capabilities is. It's just a matter of what that transition does look like, as we've seen for a lot of players already, some having phenomenal careers and some kind of falling out very quickly.
So the last question here, if the Phillies were to dip their toes into signing one of the two remaining Japanese players that are posted and are, need to make a decision in the next 72-ish hours or so, two-part question here. Likelier chance it's Imai or Okamoto, and then for you personally, Imai or Okamoto?
Yeah, this is really hard, because I think both pitching and hitting both have a lot to offer, but we've seen season after season there is still more necessary. You talk about the top of the lineup and how phenomenal that is, but then you look so far down to when you see Alec Boehm hitting cleanup, and you're like, that
Sure.
Can't really happen much longer. And you look at pitching, same deal. I mean, there are questions of what Andrew Painter can contribute in the near future, in the long term, based on what their window is. That might not exactly line up in their eyes based on where his health and performance is. That's a big question of where for Dombrowski am I going to look for a short-term replacement. That is really hard, because I feel like my answer would almost align with personal preference and just what I view needs more help overall. I would think hitting, probably. I think that is the thing when it comes to the postseason of what we've seen flame out the most. And so I think really that's all Dave Dombrowski has to be looking at going forward. I mean, the regular season is what it is. He's, they've won a lot of games during that time, but as soon as the postseason comes, there's always some sort of falter. And I think hitting is the biggest falter. And I think that's where most of the money really needs to be pushed, which is a little surprising at this point in time that it doesn't seem a ton that way yet. I mean, re-signing Schwarber is huge, but that's not really much of an addition change to the lineup. Garcia is more wait and see, but I'm expecting one more player at the very least to be moved, especially if I'm hoping that he doesn't say that the outfield is what it is, because that would be probably one of the worst, maybe you could argue.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the clip from the pod that Buster Olney and Paul Hembo do, Paul Hembekides on ESPN. Hembo basically laid out, and I don't think he's wrong, that there is a chance this could be one of the worst outfields offensively in baseball in 2025. And I think that's probably a show. We already did that show a little bit, but it's probably a show in and of itself. But, you know, I've long talked about Justin Crawford and how I think it's time to give the kid a shot to see what he can do. So maybe it's a little Justin Crawford withstanding, but I'd feel a lot more comfortable with Justin Crawford knowing what he is, right? Singles hitter, get on base type of guy who can, you know, stretch defenses with his speed and things like that, which is, I think there's a value in that. No doubt about it. But I'd feel a lot better about a Justin Crawford in the lineup if in right field there was a guy who I'm like, okay, that's 30 home runs. Or a guy in left field where I go, okay, that's 100 RBI. You know, and I know RBI is predicated on the rest of the team, so it's not entirely within their doing, but the ability to drive runs in or the ability to hit for some pop. And I think having neither of those things, having a platoon in left, having a hopeful, that's really, I think, what the Phillies are banking on in right field is Adolis Garcia is hopeful, but hope's not a strategy. And you're hoping for right field, you're platooning in left, and you're giving a kid an opportunity in center to prove his mettle at the major league level. That, to me, all combined, put into a vacuum, that's a difficult pill to swallow as a fan and as somebody who covers the team for a team that has World Series aspirations. Any one of those things individually, I think can work. I'd be okay with a Marsh right-handed platoon. I'd be okay with Crawford getting his opportunity. I'd be okay taking a chance on a reclamation Adolis Garcia. All three of those things wide sweeping, that's where it becomes a bigger issue.
Yeah, and it's weird to say that there's somewhat of a realistic opportunity that Justin Crawford could end up being your best outfielder at the end of next season if he really soars and Adolis just totally tanks and is totally unplayable at a certain point, which is really kind of insane to say. It's like a hard pill to swallow that like a team trying to win the World Series brings up a 21-year-old and he's suddenly, you know, their best player in the outfield. And I don't know if that shows that, you know, more is definitely needed or if that is the ship they're going to sink with. But yeah, I mean, you know, as you said, like there are ways and strategies in which this could work, but it is what it is if that's what Dave Dombrowski chooses to go out on.
Here I am on December 30th, covering a team that has been to the postseason, 4 straight years now, and has been to a World Series and 2 NLCSs, and here I am saying, man, I really wish they would have signed Rob Refsnyder. Like, that's where I'm at, talking about this outfield. You know, and it's like, I really wish they would have signed a right-handed platoon player who has some upside. You know, that probably is not a good headspace to be for a team that has World Series. And not only World Series aspirations, but closing World Series aspirations. Yeah,
I mean, they've been there before with, you know, similar pieces. But, I mean, as we've seen time and time again, it's almost about like a run that you can go on and kind of throwing the dart at the same dart at the target over and over again. You know, after a while, you have to mix it up a little bit. And it doesn't seem like, you know, in an opportunity where, you know, plenty of change can come in this outfield. I mean, there are players out there that can certainly contribute more. And, you know, even a Harrison Bader, I think really makes this outfield a big upgrade as opposed to what it is. And, you know, for Dombrowski to already come out and say, you know, I think I'm done is a little questionable for sure. But I mean, I don't know.
All right, so let's take a break. On the other side, I want to get into kind of a larger conversation about this offseason and Major League Baseball offseason as a whole. We'll get into our 2025 year in review, and we'll wrap up today's show with 4 top 5 lists from the 2025 season. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We broadcast live from the Xfinity Lounge, or the Xfinity Studio, I should say, in this particular instance. We're brought to you by our friends over at Bet365 and TrueMark Financial, and we'll be right back after this. All right, so you found your special someone, that person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. Now you know what the next question is. Well, before you even pop that question, you're going to have a million different questions about the perfect ring for your partner. That's where our friends at Bucci Jewelry and Design come into play, because you don't know, or maybe you don't know what the 5 C's are, how much money you're able to spend, what your budget is going to get you. It is a stressful experience. I've been there. That's why working with our friends Joe and Michelle at Bucci Jewelry and Design has been a game changer. They make the process seamless. They make you
feel like family. You're not just a customer to them. You are one of one. They actually listen to you. They help you figure out what your partner is going to love, and then their team designs something completely custom right there in-house. There's no pressure. There's no pushy sales vibes. It's just good people who love what they do and do what they love. So next time you need that perfect piece, go see Joe and Michelle at Bucci's Jewelry and Design. 30 plus years in the game, voted Philly's #1 jeweler year after year. Over 1,000 5-star reviews. You can check them out at BucciJewelers.com and tell them that we here at PHLY sent you. All right, with the winter months in full swing, you know that means we have an incredible slate of sports across a bunch of different platforms, whether it be pro football playoffs about to start, college football playoff in full swing, and how about this, pro hockey, pro hoops, and college hoops, all right there for your watching enjoyment. And if you call yourself a sports fan, you have to get Xfinity. There's no lagging, no buffering, no switching between apps. It's just the best sporting destination where you can find all of the best games and your favorite teams all in one place. It's the perfect fan flex where you get all of that action right there in your living room. And with crystal clear optics, enhanced sound with 4K, it's going to feel like you're at the arena or at the stadium anyway, and you don't have to worry about battling traffic and paying for tickets. And sometimes you can have up to 4 games going at once with the quad box. Because why not? You can. And on top of that, you get real-time notifications and live stats right there on your TV. So next game day, make sure that big fan in your life isn't a big fail. Tell them to learn more at Xfinity.com. Xfinity, imagine that.
All right, welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zulli, Ethan Hartley, and everybody hanging out in the chat. Thanks so much for being here. Happy holidays and a happy new year to all of you here watching the show today. And for those that watch, each and every day, we really appreciate you being a part of this Phillies community. All right, let's get to our big takeaway segment of the day, which is brought to you by our friends over at Xfinity. Xfinity, imagine that. I was sitting here thinking the other day, nothing is happening. And there's been way too many times where I have come on the airwaves and gone, well, we're in a wait and see mode. And then the Phillies made a plethora of moves. And when I say nothing is happening, I mean really across all of baseball. I'm not just talking about with the Phillies. I'm talking about with Major League Baseball as a whole. And so my big takeaway as we head into the new year is that Major League Baseball's offseason, in terms of when action takes place, needs to be truncated. There needs to be a signing period that does not last from the day after the World Series, basically, all the way through till whenever. This open-ended offseason where it's like, take your time, no big deal, it's fine, you sign whenever you want to sign. It's like, it doesn't work for most people. Now, again, this is me as a fan, me as an analyst, me as somebody who gets paid to talk about the league and the team, kind of complaining. And I understand I'm like old man yells at clouds screaming into the ether. This is not going to get changed. This does nothing for Major League Baseball. But in terms of, I look at other leagues, and the NBA is probably the craziest with it because there's that like legal tampering period, which is the dumbest phrase in the world. But the NBA is the craziest with it because as soon as the deadline hits or the start date hits, there is a mad rush. It's like Black Friday sales when people used to shop in the store. Like the doors would open and there would just be a push of people going to go get whatever they were going to buy. The NBA signing period feels that same way, where it's like, all right, it's 2:00 and everybody has already signed. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that extreme, but I do think this 5-month period has become a little bit over dramatic and oversaturated with nothing, that I do think we need to kind of almost internally look at this and say, all right, here's the start date, here's the end date, and signings, major league signings, have to happen within these two frames. Whether it's the first day after the World Series through the end of the year, or it's through January, or whatever it may be, because I do think that there is a little bit of a holding pattern right around this time. The holidays roll in, people are spending time with their families. They're not thinking about their jobs, which I totally get. I don't want to think about my job either. And so this is not me trying to like shill for billionaires over millionaires. But I do think in terms of the way that this gets conducted, a tightening up of the schedule would be super beneficial for teams structuring their rosters. Because right now I look at the Phillies and I go, why is a 35-year-old catcher kind of holding the Phillies at arm's length when they have to make other moves. And I don't know if they're going to make other big moves, but when they have to make other moves, having a 35-year-old catcher be the determining factor, the first domino to fall, seems like a weird thing to me. And it's not just the Phillies that this happens. I just need a spot where there is a time frame of signing and your roster can be constructed in a way where, okay, here's our top priorities. It's re-signing Schwarber. It's bringing JT Realmuto back. It's finding a right fielder. It's adding to the bullpen. It's finding a starting pitcher, right? That's your 5. Let's just say, for example, Schwarber signs early. Well, you're still only at number 2, even though you have gotten number 3 by being able to sign Brad Keller. Schwarber signs early. You're still waiting on 2. You haven't been able to really justify or rectify the cleanup spot, which means whether it's finding another outfielder or a third baseman or a second baseman or whatever the case may be, and your starting pitching has been the same, even though your depth has dwindled. Just from a Phillies outlook, if we can truncate this thing a little bit, that would be really, really beneficial to not just us covering the team, not just you as a fan of the team, but also the team's roster construction in general. So that's kind of my big takeaway of the week, because not a whole lot has happened for the Phillies or elsewhere. There are a ton of really good players that are still on the market. Both Okamoto and Imai have decisions to make, but it's not just the international players. It's Kyle Tucker. It's Alex Bregman. It's Bo Bichette. It's Zach Gallen. It's Framber Valdez. It's Ranger Suarez. There are a lot of really good – there's just way too many good players still sitting around as we get to the new year. We can consolidate this thing a little bit. I think it makes the offseason, first and foremost for us, more enjoyable. And second of all, I think it allows teams to make their roster construction in a way done earlier than what we're currently looking at. Ethan, I wanted to get your thoughts on this as well. I know that it can't be the mad rush that the NBA is, but I need something to be done about like the willy-nilly nature of the MLB offseason, where there's weeks without any kind of news happening.
Yeah, it's a really struggling format for sure. And even I was thinking about it as you were talking, like sometimes because of this super prolonged inactivity and, guys are still working out, but they, come into the season almost, they don't even really get a spring training. Like I think of Jordan Montgomery, who held out for so long and then showed up like, I think he signed like either right before the season or like, as soon as the season started, and then it's just like fallen off a cliff entirely. So it's even interesting at a point for just these guys getting in rhythm for the season, acclimated with a new team, if that's, where they're going to end up being, to have that time to actually be able to do that. And so it feels like now at this point, as we've seen this season after season, that, there is no like rush for that. And all that matters is just getting your money and the results are what they are at that point. It's almost
and
like
listen, I said it earlier, like I don't want to begrudge players for getting the best offer that they possibly can. Just like any other human being in any other profession, you should go get the best offer that you possibly can. I think it would be silly to take a job right away without seeing what the market dictates, especially if you are a veteran within your field, right? I went through it. I know you've gone through it as a young member of the media. Sometimes in the early stages of your career, job offers like aren't banging down your door. You've got to be really, really aggressive on your side. As you become more seasoned and a more veteran in any industry, not just ours or sports, you have the ability to, I don't want to say stake offers against each other, but that's kind of what it is, right? You have the ability to say, hey, I have X amount of dollars from this organization, and I have X amount of years from this organization. I'm not begrudging professionals that ability. There are human beings too. Their careers are finite. I know it's more money than we'll ever be able to imagine, but relatively, it's still human beings being human beings. But I think from a grand scheme of things, all across Major League Baseball, that doesn't change you getting your money. It just changes how quickly everything has to unfold.
Yeah, and I just see like as time goes on, I think Blake Snell is even kind of the opposite example of Jordan Montgomery. I believe he signed with San Francisco really late, and you haven't really seen much of a. I think he had a little bit of a down year at first, but then recently winning another Cy Young award and getting another big contract. He's still had like his opportunity to kind of get back into rhythm and move on. So maybe it's more of like a player preparation thing, but yeah, the format itself and this idea of winter meetings and I don't know, it does like really kind of stale out the product in that we end up waiting a long time. There is almost some kind of like with everything else that we've seen, like with money and the not having a cap floor or cap ceiling, whatever it is, like money really becomes more of a driving factor than most things in terms of just getting a deal done. Whereas in other sports, there are windows and certainly money is the point of conversation, but there is more of a rush to get it done.
So I don't think this ever changes. I'm going to wrap this big takeaway segment up with this. I don't think this ever changes because baseball is probably the ultimate free market sport in terms of how much you can sign for, no salary cap for now. I don't think this ever changes. The only thing I will say is I wonder if a salary cap ever gets implemented, will that change the precedent? Because then, if the Phillies have $10 million to spend and they say, hey, we have two players that we really like. First one to get back to us gets $10 million. I don't know if it's that extreme, but I wonder if a salary cap does impact that a little bit.
Yeah, the players are able to pull the strings of the teams a little more because they know they can do it if they really want their services, and some teams do and some teams don't. But they have that time period to be able to work with that. Whereas other sports, it's a window and then that running runs out, and then the player can ultimately be shorthanded otherwise if they had their own preferences beforehand and they didn't capitalize. Trying to pull the strings themselves and they miss out on that opportunity.
Okay, so let's pause for just a little bit. On the other side, we're going to get into our a quick Phillies season in review, and then we're going to get into our top five segment, which I think might take a little bit more time. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We broadcast live from the Xfinity Mobile Studios, and we'll be right back after this.
Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary with our friends over at Bet365. You find out why 90 million users worldwide have teamed up with Bet365 because they are the live in-game betting pioneers. You can get in on constantly changing lines, and you can live stream 780,000 different events each and every year across 78 different sporting platforms. They offer awesome early payout across the NHL. If your team goes up by 3 goals at any point, your bet is going to be marked as a winner. And how about this? Right now, new users who sign up with Bet365, use that promo code on the bottom of the screen there, PHLY365, deposit $10, place a bet for just $5, and you'll get $200 back in bonus bets, whether your bet wins or loses. You can use that bonus bet money on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and a heck of a lot more. You find out why it's never ordinary with our friends over at Bet365. You must be 21 and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Do you really want one of your starting pitchers pinch hitting in a big spot? Of course you don't. It's not worth the risk, the time, or the money. You want to keep your stars focused on what they do best. And the same can be said for your business. You don't want your top people buried in operations, the tedious, time-consuming, redundant activities that not only take their time away, but also wear them down. You want to make sure your impact players stay fresh and focused on what they do best. That's where our friends at Togo come in. They're an integrated part of your team that take the work off your starter's plate so they can focus on making your company and your business move forward. Every engagement starts with free process mapping and engineering, and there is not a dime billed to you until the real work begins. And with each Togo program, they include a dedicated staff, custom automation, and a US-based process engineer team who act as your quarterback while you stay in control. At Togo, they turn your playbook into performance. You call the shots, they execute your way, and they advise along the journey. Visit harnesstogo.com to scale smarter, work faster, and stay focused on winning.
What's up, my friends? Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zulli, Ethan Hartley here, and a happy new year to you, and a happy holidays to you as well as we wrap up today's show. Got about 20 minutes left, and then we will be back on Friday for a New Year's, or our first show of the 2026 new year and new season. So I'm really excited for that. Let's get into our quick Philly season in review, Ethan. So this was an interesting year for the Phillies in terms of how they're perceived across the city. Because I think we're probably to the point where the goodwill from Phillies fans is just about up in terms of the team that they are, the team that they've, trended downwards in the postseason, despite the fact that objectively, on paper, they are still a good baseball team. They won 95 games last year. They've won 90-plus games 96 games last year. They've won 95 games each of the last 2 seasons. They've won 90 games or more each of the last 3 seasons. They have one of the highest payrolls in baseball. They paid the 4th most luxury tax in 2025. They had the runner-up in the MVP, the runner-up in the Cy Young voting, the shortstop or the batting title winner in the National League in Trey Turner. It was, if you look at it, like if you just strip the fandom away, you strip the season away, the how it happened away, it would have been considered another successful season for the Phillies. Christopher Sanchez emerged as the star that we all knew that he was, but now the national spotlight knows who he is. Zach Wheeler had a hell of a start to the year before the unfortunate blood clot and then the thoracic outlet surgery. The addition of Jesus Luzardo was a huge boost to the Phillies starting rotation. Kyle Schwarber, again, 56 home runs, finishes second in the MVP voting. All of those things are the positive of this season. The negative for Phillies fans is, of course, the final 4 games of the year. And I think for a lot of people, that is how seasons are dictated, and that's how seasons are judged. And now for the last 2.5 seasons, the final 4 games of this year, the final 4 games of last year, and the final 2 games of 2023. You're talking about the last 10 postseason games. The Phillies are 2-8. 0-2 in games 6 and 7 of the 23 NLCS, 1-3 last year, 1-3 against the Mets, and really against the Mets specifically, and the 2 games against the Diamondbacks looked pretty bad. And so I think if you play the how did the season happen game, it was a very good regular season with a similar disappointing ending for a lot of fans. And so for you, how do you judge this year? How do you judge what was an objectively good season, 162 games, and an objectively bad 4 games?
It's so hard. I think me as a fan more so leans towards that. It's all about the final 4 games. I saw this team reach the World Series at one point, and I've been waiting for that time for them to get back to it, and still have yet to see that. And have since then actually gotten even worse over time in terms of their postseason run. But there is a lot to look forward to. And again, as I touched on earlier, it's all about runs. So if the combination of things that happened last year and enough changes that happened this year, they could go on another magical run, because those are important pieces to have, having a Christopher Sanchez type player to come out in game 1 or game 2 in any situation and just absolutely dominate, and even getting another start back in and later in a series can be really impactful as well, when the results needed are much more narrow. Stuff like that is really important to look at in the grand scheme of things, and even to still touch on Sanchez, player progression as well, like having a player like him now at this point in time to go into next season and give yourself hopefully a better opportunity at this point to be set up for more success later in the postseason is really important. Ultimately, I think what makes it hard is losing players as well at the same time of that. Ranger as well, probably my second favorite player to have go up in a postseason matchup, who's just absolutely dominated year after year, is going to be missed a ton. I really think, as we've seen other pitchers go on at this point to sign contracts, they'll probably get somewhere of $30 million. And that's probably something that the Phillies have no opportunity to match, but he's dominated year in and year out. As much as the past 2 seasons at this point, he's had second half struggles after injury, fatigue, whatever that might be. He's always stepped up in the postseason, and a phenomenal pitcher that will truly be missed. But again, now that we've shortened that window to only 4 games, that's a player that's not going to be around, and that'll be really hard to fill at this point in time, whoever that might be.
So I'm going to give you 2 numbers. I want you to tell me what you think these 2 numbers are. And I'm going to take the points out, because obviously it kind of gives you an indication of what they are. 287 and 299. Do you know what those two numbers were from the 2025 season?
Oh. 287, 299. I mean, they're ERAs of some capacity.
So the 287 is a 2.87 ERA as a team in 4 games against the Dodgers in the postseason. They as a team pitched to a 2.87 ERA. As a team, they had a 299 OBP. The Phillies did.
Wow.
That's the two numbers that jump out to you, and that is legitimately the difference maker between why they were unsuccessful in the 2025 season. And Dave Dombrowski can sit here and yell all he wants about how they ran into the hot team. And yes, the Dodgers ended up winning the World Series, looked like the best team in the postseason, the team we expected them to be basically all year. But when you have a team 299 on base percentage in a 4-game sample size, you're not going to win many games. They hit 212. They slugged 358. They had 3 home runs, and 2 of them came from Kyle Schwarber in 1 game. They, as a group, they're big time players. 4 for 17 for Trey Turner, 235. 3 for 15, Bryce Harper, 200. 3 for 16, 188, Kyle Schwarber. Your team wasn't good in the postseason. Your big players weren't good in the postseason. And the reason that they weren't, you didn't advance or didn't even, get to a game 5, didn't advance to an NLCS, is pretty indicative of those numbers that I just gave you. This team pitched well in the postseason. Christopher Sanchez was excellent. Luzardo was excellent. Ranger was excellent. Even Aaron Nola, in those couple of innings that they used him as like the opener, was excellent. The bullpen was good. Tanner Banks, 2 scoreless innings. Joan Duran, 3 scoreless appearances. I know that he walked Mookie Betts. It's not his earned run. But if you're looking at it strictly from an ERA standpoint, he had 0 earned runs allowed over the 3 2/3. It was a mostly really, really good postseason from the pitching group, both starters and relievers. You won 1 game, and outside of the big explosion in game 3, you didn't score many runs either. And so that is what I think frustrates a lot of people. You scored 3 in game 1, 3 in game 2, 1 in game 4. In your 3 losses, you scored 7 total runs. So it's hard to say, was this a bad season? No, it was not. But I think for a lot of people, they're judging a summer on 4 games. And at this point, I'm not sure that I can blame them.
Yeah, and touching on that more, it came from your 3 best players. This isn't a problem where like you just needed 1 or 2 end of the lineup players that could have really helped elevated your team. Like replacing Johan Rojas. If that was the only issue that really killed them, then sure, maybe there's a little more excitement into that. No, these came from your 3 best players. I remember for every postseason show, I would make a big 3, at this point in the series, because they were all horrible. And it's worth pointing out that, these are the players you paid so much money to step up for in the biggest moments, and they're not living up to it. And I think it kills the rest of the pecking order, because, it doesn't matter if, Brandon Marsh does really good at the end of the lineup. If it wins you a game, sure. But if it's not, like in a full series outlook, if it's the biggest players not stepping up, then they are the biggest disappointments by far. And so I think that really emulates my biggest disappointment, especially because they are getting so much money. They're expected to do so much. And yet now 2 postseasons in a row, like Nick Castellanos had the 1 walk-off against the Mets series, like that. Sure. That speaks to like, okay, great, we're getting help from, outside opportunity. But if it's not from the main core that has gotten us to here at this point, if it's totally just taking a 180 turn, then it's almost like you weren't really meant for the postseason in the first place. If the structure isn't there going into the same postseason, if the best players aren't going to perform outside of Kyle Schwarber in 1 game, then it's like almost completely dysfunctional.
They're a very good regular season team. There's no question about it. They've proven that. Their starting pitching over the last 3 years has been better than pretty much every team in baseball. And I think that's how they hang their hat, is they say, hey, our starting pitching is better than yours, and we're going to beat you 2 out of 3 in June or in July or in August because of that. When you're the problem at this point is when you hang your hat on that, it's fine. but you're going to live by the sword and die by the sword of not scoring any runs. And when you don't score any runs, obviously, no duh statement of the day, you can't win any baseball games. And so I look at it almost as like goaltending in hockey. You can have the greatest goaltending in the world, but all that goalie can do is keep the game tied if your team isn't scoring. Same can be said for your pitching. If your team's not scoring, all they can do is limit damage. And then the microscope comes into play, right? The fine tool, and every pitch gets elevated. And that's where you see guys only give you 5 1/3, and you feel, oh, it's only 5 1/3. Why did your best pitcher only go 5 1/3? Well, he threw 25 high leverage pitches last inning because if he doesn't get out of that jam, it's 2-0, and it feels like it's 20-0. And so at this
not giving
point,
it much cushion.
At this point, they're a good regular season team. They have to show us that they're a good postseason team again.
Yeah, 100%. And as I just mentioned, you're not getting much cushion otherwise. So
right.
It becomes almost more mentally stressful because again, one swing, one wild pitch, and the game completely changes on its head. Whereas
sure.
If you're up 3, 4, even 2 runs, there's less pressure to that, and it makes it easier, and your rhythm and command can stay more aligned. Whereas not if you're mentally, totally more elevated.
I think it's you're just like locked into that microscopic feel where every mistake is magnified and every at bat becomes critical. That's hard to play that way. That's hard. I would say that's hard to pitch that way if your offense is not providing you anything.
Yeah.
So to
100%.
give you a 2.87 ERA, pitching staff gets all the credit in the world. They did a great job. Shohei Ohtani was pretty much useless for a majority of the series. They did a really great job with a lot of this top end Dodgers talent. It doesn't play anywhere if your offense can't produce. So let's
100%.
take a break. On the other side, we're going to get into our top 5 list to wrap up the show. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We broadcast live from the Xfinity Lounge, and we'll be right back after this.
Whether your favorite team wins or not, there's always another way to win with our friends at the BetParx online casino app. You can check out incredible new casino games like Huff and More Puff and Fireblaze Sky Queen, which is a BetParx exclusive. It's just a small reason as to why it's the only app that I would ever use to play all of my favorite casino games right there in the palm of my hand. I can play blackjack, roulette, craps, slot, poker, baccarat, and so much more. And those hot online slots like Cash Eruption and 88 Fortune, or incredible slot games based on your favorite streaming shows like The Walking Dead, Squid Game, Peaky Blinders, and so much more. And how about this? Right now, new users get up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. So what you're going to do, head on over to betparx.com, download the app right now, and enjoy all of the action and the excitement right there at the casino, right there from your fingertips. You must be 21 and physically located in PA, New Jersey, Maryland, or Michigan for BetParx. You love to play, you play to win, you bet, BetParx. Gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. New year, new you, right? That's what they always say. And if you're thinking about that with your finances and you've been waiting to take an advantage of a great offer to boost your savings, that's where our friends at TrueMark Financial come into play. They are offering a limited 5-month certificate at 4.25% APY. And with a minimum deposit of just $500, it's super easy to get started. So whether you're thinking about a special goal, whether that's a vacation, or, maybe popping that question to a special somebody, or you're just thinking about your emergency fund or want smart ways to make sure that your money works just a little bit harder, this certificate is a great option. You can open your certificate today at TrueMark.com or by visiting any one of their 24 branch locations. Annual percentage yield is accurate as of 12/15/25 and is subject to change. Certificate requires a minimum deposit of $500. Federally insured by the NCUA. Visit TrueMark.com for full details. Again, visit TrueMark.com for full details today.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Hey, want to give a quick shout out to our sister station in Chicago, CHGO. They are on their push for 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is just unbelievable. So shout out to them for doing all that great work over at CHGO. We love our friends in Chicago, excuse me. All right, let's get to our top 5 list today. Ethan and I put together a top 5 list for 4 different categories. The top 5 hitters of 2025, the top 5 pitchers of 2025, the top 5 surprising moments, could be a team, player, instance, or whatever it may be, and then the top 5 disappointing as well. So, Ethan, let's start with our top 5 hitters of 2025. And I am going to start off this list. The number 5 hitter on my list is Kyle Schwarber. 56 home runs for Schwarber in 2025. A heck of a season. Finished number 2 in the National League MVP voting. 132 RBI. The walk rates have stayed really strong. The strikeout rates have kind of been where they are, but his numbers against lefties have been really good. His numbers against 2 strikes have been really good. Kyle Schwarber had himself a heck of a season in 2025. Finished number 2 in the National League voting for the MVP. My number 4 hitter on the season is Bobby Witt Jr. You didn't think I would do a list on here and not include my favorite player in Major League Baseball. It's Bobby Witt Jr., the shortstop from the Kansas City Royals. A 295 average for Bobby Witt. He had well over 70 extra base hits, 47 doubles, which I believe led the American League, actually led all of baseball this year with 47 doubles, 23 home runs himself, has some good speed, slugged over a little bit over 500 OPS, at 852, a 7 WAR. If you're a WAR fan, he finished 3rd among hitters this year in WAR. I'm going to go Bobby Witt at number 4 for the 2025 season. Cal Raleigh gets the 3rd place vote behind the 2 MVP winners. Cal Raleigh shattered the record for home runs by a catcher this year, hitting over 60 home runs or hitting 60 home runs this year. Drove in 125, doing it at the most difficult and demanding defensive position in all of baseball. He gets the number 3 nod. The NL MVP, Shohei Ohtani, will be number 2. Hit, what do you have, 55 home runs for another year in a row. Stolen base numbers were down this year, just 20 stolen bases. But one of 3 players in Major League Baseball this year with an OPS over 1. One of 2 players in Major League Baseball this year with an OPS over 1. And the only guy ahead of him is the player that I believe is the best hitter in Major League Baseball. Now, there's no question that Shohei Ohtani is the best player in Major League Baseball, but the single best hitter, in my opinion, that belongs to Aaron Judge. 179 hits, a 331 average, 85 extra base hits, including his 53 home runs, drove in 114, had a 1.14 OPS this year, and led all players in baseball, position players in baseball, in WAR with a 9.7. Aaron Judge, to me, the best hitter in baseball, the best hitter in 2025.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think our lists are very much different. The top 3 are mainly the same. 4 of the 5 same players are the same. For me, kind of my deciding factor when actually looking at it, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Big Amish, Nick Kurtz, as I've talked about before. However, adding to that, even when looking at kind of what my final breakdown was advanced analytics, I believe he finished number 5 in WRC plus, which I was totally stunned by. I mean, I knew he had a phenomenal season, and I know even just the eye test and watching him, kind of the impact that he has when pitchers almost change their entire approach when it comes to him in the lineup, and what he's done for the Athletics in general in terms of this almost resurgence to mediocrity as of now, but still a lot of upside. Again, him only being a rookie, finishing.
I think I'm going to talk more about this Athletics team in my surprises category. But they've put together a nice little unit here. Nick Kurtz probably is going to be the headliner of it. Unbelievable season for Kurtz, kind of coming, I don't want to say coming out of nowhere. People knew who he was as a prospect. But to do it in his rookie season was sensational. I think the top 2, probably undebatable in this category. Cal Raleigh deserves to be number 3. Schwarber deserve it on the list. That number 5 spot, where the 5th player, Kurtz could have been on the list. You could have gone with, I think Corbin Carroll had himself another heck of a season. You can go with always Mr. Consistent, Jose Ramirez, if you want to go in that list. Like, there's a ton of different guys that you could have chosen from. Bo Bichette could have been on this list. It's offense was on full display this year, but I think the top 2 are pretty much non-negotiable this year.
Yeah, 100%. I even think the order at this point is a little more objective rather than opinionated at this point in time, just based on the numbers and what they were both able to do. Obviously, both phenomenal players, and as I think you phrased it best, Ohtani's the best player, but Judge was the best hitter, and I think that shows in this list.
All right, so drop in the comments down below your top 5 for this season. Who's the top 5 hitters of the 2025 season? Before we get to our pitchers, I want to say thank you to everybody watching on all of our streaming services, Roku, Samsung, Xfinity. Head on over to allphly.com to watch the rest of the show. We're officially in overtime. All right, let's get to our top 5 pitchers of the 2025 season. Ethan, I went first on the hitters. I'm going to let you go first for your top 5 pitchers of the year.
Yeah, so I think this one I went more with sort of overall profile. I think pitching, especially, there are a lot more metrics that kind of determine like unluckiness in terms of like fielding independence. Sometimes errors that can happen and whatnot. So I think in my mind, I kind of went with kind of a more holistic approach of just who was kind of the most dominant in terms of their final performances. And I think the top two are fairly easy to touch on. Not really much needs to be done there. Screwball and Skeens just overall completely dominant in terms of what they're able to do and their abilities, and their numbers reflect that. I think kind of my X factor of a little more was including Yamamoto at number 5, and I think mostly I went for that because of the postseason alone and just what he was able to produce and being called up in Game 7 and says, no, I want to pitch, I can pitch, I'm fine. And I believe only having 1 day of rest, 2 days of rest, an incredibly short amount of time to just go up there and then be almost flawless in his performance overall. And then Sanchez, of course, number 3, the runner-up in the NL Cy Young, has been phenomenal all season long. We have touched on them so much. And Crochet, I think, is another player that I've just loved to watch in terms of what he did in the postseason, especially was phenomenal in Game 1. And I think just all year round, he has just been so, I don't want to say underrated, because of course he's on a list of the top 5 pitchers, and I think there are so many other names you could point out, but I think just overall, I think what he's been able to do and just being a complete pitcher is really, I can't think of a good word. Again, I kind of draw back to underrated, but I don't think talked nearly as much as obviously the top 2, and I think maybe still needs a little more of the postseason success to kind of, I think, we talked about more as opposed to the rest of the guys on this list.
Yeah, I think it's a super fair list, and mine, again, not very far off, which either means you and I are thinking very similarly, or it feels like it was a pretty easy decision, especially towards the top. The only player that I did not include on my list was Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who I toyed with him, Hunter Brown, who I decided to go with, a whole bunch of different guys. Could have gone with Logan Webb. So when I looked at number 5, there was a couple of criteria that I went with. What was the vacuum of player when you plugged in ERA, how many innings they pitched, their whip, their strikeouts per 9, all of those things came into play. And I ended up going with Hunter Brown from the Houston Astros, 2.43 ERA this year, made one more start than Yamamoto. That really doesn't change anything. He's a 2.43. Yamamoto was a 2.49. He pitched 185, Yamamoto 174. They were very interchangeable in almost every statistical category. Strikeout numbers were basically identical, 206 to 201. Strikeouts per 9, 10 to 10.4. It was a whip, 1.03 and 0.99. You go Hunter Brown, you go Yamamoto. I'm okay with either one. I just flipped Crochet and Sanchez just because I think Crochet is one of the most diabolical pitchers in all of baseball. And I mean that with the most reverence possible. Like, we think about dominance, you think about Skubal, you think about Skeens, and rightfully so. Those two guys are nasty. Skubal wins back-to-back AL Cy Youngs. Skeens wins his first NL Cy Young. He's going to win 3 or 4 if he stays healthy and on this trajectory. But Garrett Crochet is just a dude who wants the baseball. And when he gets on the mound, he wants to go right after you. And the numbers back it up. He made 32 starts this year, 2.59 ERA. You know, I'm not wins don't mean that much to me in terms of an individual pitcher, but 18 wins is an incredible accomplishment in today's game. Won 18 games, 2.59 ERA, over 200 innings pitched. Guy wants the rock. Struck out 255 batters this season across Major League Baseball. Nobody had more strikeouts than Garrett Crochet, 11.2 strikeouts per 9, a 1.03 whip. The dude is impossible to hit, especially if you're left-handed. Funky delivery, high leg kick, kind of some sidewinder-ish action to him, but still finds a way to come back over the top. I go Crochet 3, Sanchez 4. You want to go Sanchez 3, Crochet 4? I'm not going to fight you. I think the top 2 are kind of in their tier. The next 2 are in their tier. And then you could go 5 or 6 different guys, depending on what your stat of choice is.
Yeah, 100%. And I think kind of, again, what I touched on, overall pitching profile, I think, again, just one of the best pitchers out there.
All right, so let's very quickly run through our disappointments and our surprises of 2025. I'll start at number 5 on this one. Number 5 surprise of the year, Jacob deGrom, staying healthy and dominating. He made 30 starts this year for the first time in 6 seasons, pitched to a 2.97 ERA, a .92 whip, struck out 185, pitched 172 innings. He was filthy this year, turned back the clocks in a big way. Jacob deGrom was incredible in 2025, and I think probably would have gotten more press if the Rangers were better than they were.
100%.
Number four,
Yeah.
number four, I'm going to go local. Trey Turner's defense improvement. I just did not expect this at all. It was a huge step in the right direction defensively. He won the batting title, which was a nice addition. But his defense was so much better in 2025 than it was in 2024. Was a really nice step in the right direction. As I brought up to you earlier with Nick Kurtz, my number three, the A's might be they might be cooking a little bit. They might have something. Kurtz, Wilson, Langoliers, Rooker, Butler, Soderstrom, Clark. The team gets a little bit of pitching. They're going to be really, really good in a couple of years. Number two, I'm going to give you a timeline of stops. You tell me who this is, Ethan. April, Dunedin. May, Vancouver. June, New Hampshire. August, Buffalo. October, the World Series.
Trey Savage?
Trey Savage's emergence is incredible this season. He started the year in Dunedin in Single A and became a huge factor for the Toronto Blue Jays getting to 7 games in the World Series. I'm interested to see what a full year of Major League Baseball and adjustments and things like that. But he was so good. That emergence was unbelievable. That's my number two. Number one, the Milwaukee Brewers just keep doing it, man. That team has traded Corbin Burns. They've traded Devin Williams. They let Willie Adames walk. They never sign any big-time free agents, and all they do is continue to win. Pat Murphy is an incredible manager. They won 97 games this year, the most in baseball. Really heck of a year for the Milwaukee Brewers. They pitch well. They run the bases well. They don't strike out. They're a fundamentally sound team. The Milwaukee Brewers are my big surprise of 2025.
Yeah, my list, I don't know how I would rank these per se. I just kind of put 5 of them together. But first one, Cal Raleigh shattering records, I think, was kind of something, I mean,
unreal
I didn't really
season.
expect. Yeah, I mean, you kind of saw jumps here and there. He always demonstrated a lot of power, but I think to take it to this level, I don't think anybody expected, and it was phenomenal to watch. You know, the big dumper nickname coming to the forefront is one of the best you could probably ever name. I also had the Brewers resurgence, I guess, on the list. You know, they've always been around in the mix, you know, had some deep playoff runs more than others. But yeah, just again, to kind of get the best out of players despite financial restrictions has always been something I've always appreciated in baseball. I think it's one of the tougher challenges to overcome. And, you know, even though their playoffs weren't as hopeful as they were, or playoff results weren't as good as they were expecting, you know, again, just year after year, what they're able to turn into guys who've had, you know, 5-6 ERAs elsewhere come in and just change 1 or 2 tools here and there and have phenomenal seasons. Otherwise has always been something I've appreciated, and for them to kind of jump back in front after a little bit of a hiatus was awesome to see. The Blue Jays playoff run in general, after finishing last in the regular season last year, to then again getting their run and getting all the way to the World Series was absolutely phenomenal to watch. I had the Rays running out of juice. I think kind of similar to the Blue Jays, was kind of the Rays have always been the team year after year to always tweak things here or there. And this was the first year was like, you know, this is kind of a little bit of a true disappointment. And, you know, a lot of things are missing, and we'll see what happens next. My 5th on the list was Devers being traded midseason. It very much seemed like, you know, things kind of were, I know there were contract disputes, like things seemed a little okay-ish. They were kind of, I mean, he had like good comments, but he still played. Like, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty.
I'm not a DH. I'm not a first baseman. I'm not a this. I'm not a that. Oh, by the way, you're also the worst defender at third base ever.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, just saying those things, but then still just like, you know, as soon as the season kind of got in a groove, it was like, okay, I think things are fine, I guess. You know, we'll revisit this later on. Then just like, nope, you're gone. And for like a weird package too, like, I mean, we'll see how like Kyle Harrison.
Yes, you know, Kyle Harrison needs to be good for that to make sense.
Yeah, exactly. Or else they just kind of like gave him away and not really a lot of upside. Like they got Jordan Hicks, who, you know, is just a big money player who, you know, hasn't really lived up to it.
All right, so let's get to our top 5 disappointments of the year. Again, could be team, could be player. I'm going to start with my number 5 pick. This guy, I think, had a lot of hype, and he's playing in a big city, and he has just not become the guy that they expected him to be. My number 5 disappointment on the year is Anthony Volpe. the shortstop for the New York Yankees. I know he had a shoulder problem, but he hit 212. His on-base percentage was at 272. Slugged just 391. Defense tanked in 2025 after winning a Gold Glove a couple of years ago. I just think Volpe's like going in the wrong direction. I texted a buddy of mine who's a Yankees friend, a friend of mine who's a Yankees fan, excuse me. And I said, what are the chances of a bounce back year for Anthony Volpe in 26? And he said, same chances we find world peace. So not a good sign for the Yankees shortstop heading into 2026.
Yeah.
Number 4, I'm going to go with a team here. I think they overachieved in 24, but underachieved in 25. I'm going to go with the Kansas City Royals at my number 4 pick. 82-80, not a bad year for a team that doesn't spend a ton of money. But after making the postseason last year, I expected a little bit more from them. It was a regression year for them. They ended up scoring just 651 runs, finished 6 games back in what became the worst division in baseball in terms of the division winner making the postseason. I'm going to go with the Royals at number 4. Number 3, very similar to Anthony Volpe, but I think this guy is higher on the list just by my sheer expectations of him as a prospect. It's Jordan Walker from the St. Louis Cardinals. Like, this guy just needs to figure it out. It's time to, because at this point, I think he's just kind of running out of time. He was once a highly touted prospect, is really just kind of lingering. The reason I put him there ahead of Volpe, A, because of personal preference, and B, his metrics stink. He was in the 15th percentile or worse last year in strikeout rate, chase rate, whiff rate, squared up rate, and expected numbers. It's kind of time to put up or shut up for Jordan Walker, because I don't think the Cardinals fans are going to want to wait around on this kid much longer. I think he's a very talented player. He's just not put it together yet.
Yeah, 100%.
Number 2, the Baltimore Orioles offense. This young core's got to figure it out. They have to bounce back. They only scored 677 runs last year. 23 teams scored more runs, and only 3 teams in baseball had a worse run differential than the Baltimore Orioles did in 2024. In 2025. They've got to figure it out. They need pitching. They need to bounce back in a big way. But the number 1 biggest disappointment, if you strip your fandom out of this for a second, the objective number 1 biggest disappointment of the 2025 season was the New York Mets. $765 million for Juan Soto, traded for several relievers at the deadline to try to figure it out, but they overlooked their biggest deficiency, which was starting pitching, and it cost them. There was a stretch over 2-month period in the summer where no starter other than David Peterson was able to complete 6 innings in a game for 2 straight months. And only the Blue Jays, who did end up going to the World Series, but only the Blue Jays gave up more runs in 2025 and made the postseason than the New York Mets. It's bad enough to get bounced in a wild card round. It's worse to not make the postseason with the amount of money that the Mets spent last year. We'll see what a retooled Mets look like in 2026, but they're objectively the biggest disappointment of 25.
Yeah, 100%. They were one of the teams on my list. Enough said. You said it all already. Just, again, one of the spend so much money and you can't even make the postseason is pretty embarrassing. And even their offseason moves now have been, we'll see, but it's not
interesting.
Yeah, it's not giving me really any more confidence other than just the fact that the guys on their team already are either going to turn around or they're going to have some sort of pop from some of these.
Well, until they trade for Tarek Skubal.
Yeah, whenever that happens at this point. Similar but slightly different lists for myself. I had Baltimore as a whole just like totally plateauing, whether that be, the prospects in their farm system, guys who have now made it to the major league level and none of them really taking like a super major step forward. We're still waiting on Jackson Holiday to be like everything that they talked about beforehand. Hasn't really happened yet. And, so we'll wait and see. I am very excited about their offseason moves. I definitely feel a lot better in terms of as a whole team performance, taking the next step. But again, like individual player wise, we'll wait and see. And
yeah, Mike Elias knew he needed to make some moves, and he has so far. He's gone out and acquired Pete Alonso. They acquired a starter too, didn't they? I believe they traded for Shane Baz, and they just signed Zach Eflin, middle of the rotation type of guy. But they've gone out and made some and traded for Taylor Ward, gone out and made some sizable moves. I think it's been a pretty productive offseason for the Orioles. I think they'd probably like another starter, but so far it's been a pretty productive year.
Yeah, 100%. Moving down on my list, I had the whole Devin Williams blow up. Like just very much, like a guy who's always had like the best stuff. Like you would think like with that kind of transition to New York, I would have thought it would have been fairly seamless and just the total opposite. And then like almost at the end, not even being used in the postseason. It was just very sad for one of the best relievers in general. The Mets as well, as I talked about. And I also had the Texas Rangers hitting as a whole, just for a team that, won the World Series a couple of years ago, kind of keeping that core mostly together. And then almost everyone just kind of totally taking steps down, like one by one. And so team that doesn't even make the postseason. And now serious changes have been coming as the core kind of starts to break up. I think that was kind of the final sign that, listen, stuff needs to be done. My final one, and actually it was funny, I first started with Anthony Santander, then I was like looking at the numbers, I was like, oh, wait a second, it's like almost every single guy. Any 2024 hitting free agent, like Christian Walker had a pretty slow year, and Willy Adames as well.
I mean, Willy Adames hit 30 home runs, but he also hit 212, I think, this year. It was and his defense is getting worse.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like all of those major free agents from that year have just kind of, for the new teams that they've gone to, just haven't really put it all together.
Yeah, it was an interesting offseason. I'm curious to see what the big time spenders and big time getters, I guess you could say, are gonna perform in 2026. Ethan, that's our final show of the 2025 season, the 2025 year. We'll be back on Friday for our next installment of the PHLY Phillies podcast. A big thank you to you for producing and co-hosting today. A happy holiday season again to you and your family. I hope you have an enjoyable New Year's. And we'll be back again on Friday. Big thanks to everybody in the chat for hanging out with us. Happy holidays. Happy New Year to you. 2026 is going to be an interesting year for the Phillies. We'll talk way more about it as the year unfolds. We'll talk about how this could be the make or break. I don't want to say make or break, but could be the pivot point year for the Phillies in 2026. We'll see how that unfolds. But big thank you to everybody in the chat as well. And a big thank you to Ethan again for being a part of today's show. We'll talk to you on Friday. Have a great New Year's Eve and a New Year's Day. And we'll be back at noon on Friday for the next installment of the PHLY Phillies podcast. See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.